Good day. This is Influence Today. I'm Dr. Terry Lyles. Chet Tart is away for some needed rest and vacation, some R&R time, which I talk a lot about, the rest and recovery process of who we are as humans. And you can find us at influencetoday.com. We're on all the podcast platforms, wherever you get your podcasting from. Seek it out, go there. We appreciate if you like what you've heard, like and share it with others. And you're going to want to hear the one we just did before, and you're going to want to stay tuned for this one. So my guest today, being pilot or co-pilot, because if we both have, we can shift back and forth because Chet's not here. So sometimes he's pilot and I'm co-pilot and vice versa. So my guest today, Dr. John Li, who is a flight surgeon for the Air National Guard, the Air Force, is a fighter pilot himself, has been a pilot most of his life, got into the surgery world of being a phenomenal surgery and person that we're going to talk about specifically in the hearing neurological area. I'm going to let him share more about again. So I'm going to have you go back through that again, John. But you've done amazing things for people to help save their hearing. And we came up with this concept of saveamericashearing.com, and we're just now starting to launch this. It's not even up yet, but if you hear this after we've launched it, keep going back there. If you want to find out more about what we're doing, terrylyles.com, which you hear on a regular basis, you can find out and we'll have something posted there. So Dr. Li has done some really amazing thing. His call sign is Jet Li, which I think is pretty cool. So they kept it pretty close, and not everybody gets a call sign. So you got to go through that. That's a whole nother conversation we'll have, John. But I'm glad you're back here today. So please tell them again a little bit about your intro, what you do, so I don't debauch it anyway. Share with them who you are. You're a surgeon in Jupiter, Florida. People literally fly in from all over the world to get treatment from Dr. Li. And he's only one of a handful of people that do exactly what he does by training. So, Doc, great to have you back again on Influence today. So tell us a little bit about who you are, your pedigree, and what we're going to talk about today. I'll get into.
Well, thank you, for having me on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I am a otolaryngologist, neurotologist. So I do ear, nose, and throat. After ear, nose, and throat training, I went on and did some extra work in neurotology, which is focused on ear and nerves related to the ear. So we do a lot of dizziness, vertigo, brain tumor type work. We restore hearing. We take deaf people and give them hearing back. And being here in
Amazing.
South Florida, right in Palm Beach, we've had the blessing of some pretty cool named people that I probably can't just blurt out on.
Literally
But
rock stars and superstars, because as people probably know, South Florida and especially in Palm Beach County, there's a lot of interesting people that live here and come in and out of here. And I know a bunch of those you've worked with. So yeah, to be
yeah,
frank, I mean, there's people that seek you out. So
yeah.
please.
But it's a cool thing. It's definitely a blessing. And then my side gig actually is I joined the Air Force late in life. So about 6 years ago, I joined up, and now I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Air National Guard, United States Air Force, as a flight doc, and that's fun. I get to fly back seat in an F-15, so that keeps my flying
Fun.
stuff going on. So and then there's the whole side business that we don't need to talk about. Yeah, so we were talking about hearing, I think.
Mhm. That's right.
Um, where were we? We were talking about
Save
why,
America's Hearing.
yeah,
What
why,
is your passion for that? Like, why you and I started talking about this, like, just, I don't know, weeks ago. It hasn't been that long. And then all of a
yeah,
sudden we kept having this conversation. And I'm like, it's fascinating to me that there's so much that's not being said about hearing loss and recovery that is available for hearing loss and what contributes to it. So please just share a little bit about your passion, because I mean you're the driver of this thing of Save America's Hearing. So tell us a
yeah.
little bit about your passion.
So first of all, it should be the other way around. I should love people to get hearing loss because I make
Exactly.
money. I make tons of money when people come in for a cochlear. Well, maybe not that much, but the point is that I make more money by taking care of people with
Hearing
hearing
loss.
loss. It's just that there's so many. There's so many,
Wow.
And it's like, you know what, I'd rather you hear and I not make the money than the other way around. And
Right.
so what I've noticed over the years, and it's just people come in, you know, there's definitely a trend of people who come in and say, hey, you know, it was Woodstock. Woodstock killed my hearing, so on and
Right.
so forth. And then it was Def Leppard, and then it was, you know, and then you went from the
No pun
'70s band.
intended. Def Leppard. I mean, think about
I,
it. Right.
exactly. So yeah, so you go from there, and there was the '70s bands, the '80s bands, the '90s bands, the 2000s. So and they just like, yeah, it was this concert that did it. And then I'm seeing people, you know, from churches coming in and getting
Mhm.
hearing aids and saying, hey, I have to leave my church because it's too
Right.
loud. And you know, at the time, I'm like, okay, I mean, this is just part of being part of doing business, right? But I started noticing that too. It's like there has been a trend. Either my hearing's getting worse or there has been a trend. And on top of that, yes, I did have actually an episode of hearing loss that I had to treat myself, and and I needed to be on steroids. Yeah. So in fact, public service announcement.
Wait,
If
wait. You cut yourself? Because I know you cut people's skulls
uh,
open. So you're saying you?
no, no, I didn't. I
I'm
did not have to
joking.
cut myself. But the public service announcement is this: people, when you have sudden onset hearing loss, that's something that we need to talk about briefly here.
Sure.
Sudden onset sensory neural hearing loss is a medical emergency that you treat immediately with steroids to bring your hearing back up. So
Okay.
if you, it's sort of like CPR. Like somebody falls over at Publix, you do CPR right away. You don't like, oh, let me finish
Right.
shopping on aisle 4 before I come back and do CPR. You get on it right away. So
Right.
same with hearing loss. If you have sudden onset sensory neural hearing loss, you want to jump on it right away. So I had sudden onset hearing loss. I jumped on it right away. I did steroids by mouth. I did it by injection. Normally that brings it back in a lot of people. It didn't with me. I ended up doing something called hyperbaric oxygen therapy,
Yes.
and after 3 sessions, I got my hearing back. So, but
Wow.
yeah, I just that's something that everybody needs to know is that if you have a sudden hearing loss, get tested. If it's lopsided or if it's broken, your best chance to fix it is right away. You have, you know, if you catch it within the first 2 weeks, that's really, really good.
Hmm.
You can still maybe bring it back after 3 months, but beyond 3 months, it gets harder and harder, right? So just want to say that. And ever since I had that sudden hearing loss, my hearing is just a little bit more, um, let's say, persnickety.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so I am noticing that loud sounds are louder than they need to be. And you know, I thought, okay, I've got patients like that. I'm a little bit like that. And then just this last Christmas, my daughter, who is an audio engineer, she works like on stage,
Yes.
mixing the board and stuff like that, and she balances all the sound and stuff like that at big concert venues, like big concert venues in New York City. And she came home to visit, and we happened to go to church one day, and we walk in and we have to walk right out. It is just so loud. The music is so loud. It's pounding our chests. It's hurting our ears. And she said, "Oh my goodness, somebody ain't doing something right here."
Right.
Like
Wow.
I can't believe it's that loud in that little room. That's crazy. So we get earplugs. We go back in, and you know, we have our little decibel meters. In fact, that's another thing I want everybody to do is
Yes.
get
Yes.
yourself a free, it's all, you know, every phone can download an app, a free decibel meter, and then you get to see how loud everything is. And your magic number is 85. Anything below 85, you don't have to
Mhm.
regulate. Anything
Mhm.
above 85, you want to regulate. Okay. So download one of these apps. So I downloaded one of these apps. I had it, and I took it over to the sound people behind the stage, you know, and this is in a church. Like, you know, you would imagine everybody's like super friendly in a church. The guy looked at me, saw my sound meter, looked away, totally ignored me for like 10 minutes. And I just kept pointing it out. And when I pointed out like 106 decibels, 108
Wow.
decibels, he looked at me and he pointed at his, and his said 95, 97 or something like that, maybe 100. And so it was different, but my daughter's and mine coincided. Like we, you know,
Yeah.
it was loud. And then we're also in different places too. So I mean, different places in the room,
Right.
and basically, you know, it was just such a disappointment to have such a cold reception. And it turns out, the soundboard people are very mm, sort of set in their ways.
Hmm.
They believe that they are the king of the room as far as decibels
Right.
go.
Right.
Of course, they didn't know that I was a ear, nose, and throat doc, and what do I
Yeah.
know about decibels, kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
So, right, so they didn't care about what I said, and it was just disappointing. So I brought it up to some of the higher ups, and they were like, don't talk to me, man. It's they get to choose, and we in my mind, it's like, why does it need to be this loud? Why
Right.
why
Right.
does any entertain when we're talking about industrial noise, you can't help it. A jet's going to be as loud as it's going to be. You just need
Right.
to figure out how to get people to work in that environment with earplugs and regulate it so that they don't sue. But in an entertainment environment or a worship environment, what's that all about? You know, so my point was, it doesn't need to be that loud. Why are you harming
Right.
people's ears? And the bottom line is they don't know. You can't.
Correct.
Why do people enjoy loud music? Well, because there are studies that show that loud music releases endorphins and enkephalins in your brain, just like just like smoking pot, just like uh,
Nicotine,
opium,
caffeine.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
it releases pleasure hormones in your brain when it's loud, when there's loud music. So yes, you get a high from loud. You feel really engaged. People get together, they sing and dance and clap, and you do stupid things. But the bottom, when I don't mean stupid things, but that
You could.
there's a
Yes.
bonding characteristic to loud music, and and it doesn't hurt that you can't talk to each other because now you have to pay attention, right? So
Right.
the there is a reason to do that, but what's the cost? And the cost is regular hearing loss and hidden hearing loss. And we
Mhm.
briefly talked about hidden hearing loss in our last podcast,
Yes.
but just briefly, hidden hearing loss is the loss that nobody to, can actually measure because it has to do with the number of connections to each hair cell through your synapses of the nerves that are going to it. So every hair cell has about 15 connections.
Hmm.
Uh, Another analogy would be like on a piano. If you play a piano, there's actually
Mhm.
three strings to every note that you play. You break one string, you can still play. You break two string, you can still play. It's when you break the third one, then it's a blank, 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 right?
Right.
So we have 15 or so. So 14 of them could be gone, but when you'll still pass your hearing test with one because it still works. It just doesn't give you the characteristics. So characteristics of that sound. So you can't tell a violin from an oboe or something like that if they're playing the same note. You can't distinguish speech really well. You detect the sound, but you can't understand. So we get hidden hearing loss all the time, but nobody's measuring it. So long story short is OSHA doesn't know about hidden hearing loss, doesn't regulate it, doesn't talk about it. But OSHA is industrial.
Hmm.
Nobody's regulating entertainment or church or anything like
Correct.
that.
Correct.
And so
I
that's
think
where we
it's a
step in.
huge, and that's a huge caveat
Mhm.
because people think, well, it's okay with OSHA, but like you said, OSHA is
And
corporate.
so when I went to talk to the leaders, they said, look, we comply with OSHA. We are totally good. And you know what? Church is only an hour. So we could be at even higher levels and still be good. But think about this. What about the guy who spent all night working 8 hours at the airport, maxing out his dosimetry for hearing, and he comes to
Mm.
church and think any bit over 85 pushes him over the edge, right? So that's not fair to him. And it's not fair to the grandmas, and it's not fair to the little babies. It's just, you're hurting people's hearing. Let's do something about it. And they don't seem to want to do that. So I think and that just got me to thinking that they are this way because they don't know. They
That's
don't
correct.
know the
Correct.
damage that they're doing. They don't know the potential injury that's happening to all these people. Because if they knew, they wouldn't want to do that. At least that's
Of
what I'm
course not.
hoping, right? Of
Yeah,
course
no,
not.
and I think you're right in most cases. It's just, ignorance is something that, if we don't know something, we're not going to change it. It's like raising a child. I mean, they don't know. that
Right.
touching the stove could burn their hand so bad that they could have skin loss
Right.
until they touch it once and then they get a burn and a blister and then they go to doctors like you and they're like, I'll never touch a stove again. There's not that awareness because, like you said, detecting hearing loss as an individual could be like, I just don't hear so well. They don't realize that they're actually doing damage at will and not
Yeah.
realizing what's contributing to it. And I think that's the part of the passion I had with you was we've got to tell this message. We got to get this story out
Yeah.
that hearing is one of our sensors,
Uh-huh.
it senses that we need to protect.
Right. And the other thing is that the people who complain about the noise don't
Mhm.
complain in a nice way per se. And
Right,
so they're the squeaky wheel that they just want to shut up.
right, right,
And
right.
so it's sort of like, I had a certain standing with these people, and I think by even making that complaint, like I just totally erased 20 years of connection,
Credibility.
credibility. It's like,
Yeah,
oh no, now you're one of those old farts that's just
yeah. You're gone.
complaining
Get
about
out
our
of here.
music.
You can't
Get
hear
out here,
anymore.
right? And they truly believe that. One of them came out and said, "I have never heard of anybody leaving a church over the loudness of the music." And I can sit here and like in the past week, 20 people. I mean,
Yeah,
it's maybe
in your
not 20 people,
practice,
but
but
no,
coming through your
maybe
doors.
I've had at least five a week sometimes. Just come in and
Wow.
say, "Oh yeah, that way too loud. Got to go somewhere else."
And
You know,
see, this is so if
or
you
I
just
just don't go
in,
anymore.
yeah, well, that's look, we vote with our feet and with our wallets and with our minds.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
and so this is influence today, and this is what we talk about. What's influencing our hearing loss? And Dr. John Li is our resident expert on this call today because this is what this is about. And you've made me passionate about it because there's so many aspects of our physical, psychological health, which is more of my world,
Oh
that
yeah.
can be damaged and is very difficult to recover from it. And what really alarmed me, I think, about what you've taught me about the hearing process at your level is there's really not a lot of recovery that you can do outside of aggressive surgery and replacement and hope for the best in that recovery of hearing. Because years ago, I mean, I knew people that had hearing loss and they just wore hearing aids and and that's all they could do. And that's a whole nother world. But technology has changed some of that. Thank God, the world has changed and technology has helped revolutionize some of that. But there's so many preventative things that
Mhm.
we could be doing. And I think that's what we're trying to get out as a message of what are some of those triggers
Right. Prevention is everything, because you know what happens when you lose a hair cell? It doesn't come back. It's gone
in
forever.
your ear? Yeah, that's
Yeah, your inner. Yeah, I don't mean up here in your inner
well,
ear.
I've got that going on here too, man. So it's like it is what it is. But at
Yeah.
least I've got some, but like you say in your ear, and you have like a minuscule level of those, hearing fibers in your ears than you do on your head and your body. So it it just compounds the potential fracture for
Hmm.
hearing. And we talked on the last podcast. I mean, I've got friends, and people because you do this every day that have lost significant hearing for all kinds of reasons, and they'd say, "Wow, I just wish I could hear better. I wish I didn't have that ringing in my ear." So
Oh
I
yeah.
think your passion is infectious, and that's why SaveAmericasHearing.com, which we're launching at this point. So if you go there and you don't see it, it's under construction. But you can find me through and what we're doing under TerryLyles.com and get back to us because we just started this process, Doc, and that's why I wanted you to come on with me. It's kind of like the introduction to a movie that's coming soon because we're going to do something about this.
Yeah. Co- Coming to a decibel meter near you.
Exactly. You hold it up and go, I think you're too loud, man. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Um,
and babies, when you talk about, I've been around racing my whole life,
mhm.
and very loud. Probably what saved a lot of that for me is that I was on, audio communication channels. So I had ear canal, like cans on, which are a lot better than just earbuds because they seal them up, I guess, or that's what they tell us. So I probably had a little better shake at it than people just sitting in the stands. for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And it's so loud at the Indy 500 or at
Yep.
an Indy car race, a NASCAR race, a Formula One race. You literally can't hear the person talk next to you. It's that loud.
Right.
And the closer you are to the track, the louder it is. So if I'm in the pits, where I spend most of my time, I could be standing right next to somebody and I have to text them
Huh.
because you
Yeah.
can't hear.
Right. And as we said in the other podcast, you're blessed with 15,000 hair cells that are one and done. Once they're dead, right? And
Yeah.
each one of these events is if you're knocking off a couple hundred, couple thousand each time, you got 15,000 of them. That's it, and that's done.
That's
So
scary to I've
it,
been on racetracks for most of my life and
yeah,
concerts and just and I think that's the alarming thing and what we're trying to do is not alarm people necessarily, but just say, hey, listen,
wake
you
up
know,
call.
it's just like you said, you used an analogy one time we were talking about dentistry or skin cancer, not using sunscreen.
Oh yeah,
There's all these things that are just there, and if you don't know, you just don't know.
I have a couple of analogies. One is yeah, when we were young, we
Hmm.
were sunscreen wasn't a thing, right? You just go out, got a tan.
Surf.
It
Yeah.
felt great. You're out
Yeah.
playing on the beach, so on and so forth. I'm seeing those patients come in and I'm cutting off little cancers off of them, right? So
Yeah.
and they're like, oh man, yeah, if I'd only known. So that's the same things happening with hearing. And then salt. Everybody loves salt, right? Why do people put salt? Because they salt their food because it tastes better.
Yes.
It's like awesome, right?
It's a quick high. It's an entertainment of the taste buds. Yeah, it's
Right.
good.
Right. So salt is good. No, we found out it's not good. It causes hypertension. It causes cardiac disease. So we know now not to restrict salt. And if you suddenly turn down the salt, then everybody's going to say, "Oh man, this is so bland." But yeah, it's going to because you were overdoing it. Now that you're doing it right, it's going to taste bland. So if you turn down the music, it might sound a little bit bland initially, but over time you get totally used to it, and that's where it should be. You'll finally recognize that below 85 is where it ought to be. That's where it
Right.
should be, and 85 is plenty loud.
Oh
85
yeah.
is pretty plenty loud, pretty good.
And I've noticed even in movie theaters, it's gotten softer. I don't know why, but it's not as loud as it used to be. I have found. Maybe I'm losing my hearing, but I saw Top Gun Maverick, in the movie theater a couple months ago, whatever it was, and I was like, you can still hear it, but I've been to movies that over the years where it was like I'm distracted by the sound
Mhm.
from the visual of what they're trying to show on the screen. And I don't know, maybe some of that has picked up with them. I don't really know. Maybe, like I said, I've just got enough hearing loss that it's normal again to me. But I think these are the things like movie theaters, churches, entertainment venues, concerts, things that you're talking about that can really make a difference. Like you said, people that work in the aircraft world, you know, they're you see them on runways. I mean, they have cans on because you got jet engines that would blow your ears out.
Oh
And
yeah.
but OSHA regulates that. And you talk
Oh,
some about that. So we don't have to go back to that necessarily, but I just thought it was interesting when you talked about
yeah.
OSHA.
Basically OSHA plays to the middle, right? It says, in fact, there's statistics say that over 85 decibels in a work environment, over 85 decibels. I'm going to plug in my phone and get a little extra juice here. Okay. Um, in what I was going to say, the OSHA is
OSHA, yeah.
recognizes that in environments over 85 decibels, not 90, 85, about 7% of that population will come back and sue or create some sort of legal complication for that given industry.
Wow.
At 90, it goes up to like 25%. Now, I'll have to check those exact statistics, but but they recognize that. They say, okay, that's just the cost of doing business. We know,
Right.
but if we restricted it even more, nobody could work at uh, at an F-15 flight
Yeah.
station. I mean, so you have to balance that. Whereas when we're talking about a music venue or church or something like that. It's not. it's
Entertainment at
it's it
large.
right.
Yeah.
This we should care more about your hearing than launching an aircraft. We're not
Right.
launching an aircraft. We're not talking
Right.
national security here. We're talking about just tickling your ears.
An
So protect
experience.
them. Right.
Yeah, tickle, don't kill it. And I've got a lot of tag words that we're going to probably jump into on other shows after we get all these .coms going. But there's so many, I think, really cool analogies because in my world in psychology, it doesn't take a a horrific event to cause psychological damage. It could be the reoccurrence of some abuse. It could be a reoccurrence of some shaming process that we grew up with that can cause a lot of issues. And
Mhm.
you'd say, well, I had a blast, and I watched someone die in my presence, and I've heard all these stories for decades, and those are, I think, exceptional cases. But most of the cases I've had over my life, like yours, I'm assuming, is like, I don't know, it just over time, I can't hear. Over time, I don't like people. Over time, I'm just angry every day, and I don't know why, and I don't want to be. Well, so
It-
there's some injury there.
no, you bring up a good point because there are people that at 120 decibels will suddenly lose their hearing, done, and they'll need a
Wow.
cochlear implant, done, right? And that's very dramatic. That's
Yes,
and
it can happen. Yeah.
and that's sort of like somebody having a heart attack in the middle of your concert or something like that.
Right.
But that can happen. That can happen. But what you're talking about is that slow, gradual, insidious decline. You know, uh, what was that? Was it a Bruce Lee thing where you could do a punch and the person dies like years later or something like that? I don't know.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
sort of like that's what
It's
happens right there.
concussion. It's concussion management
Yeah,
in sport. I mean,
yeah.
it's just the worst concussions are not the big impacts. It's the reoccurring impacts and the last impact that did you in. It's
The
because you've
straw
had,
that breaks
yes.
the straw that breaks the camel's back kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So
the NFL says that there's a I mean, we know from reporting, I've done a lot of concussion management in that world, which is still a CTE kind of an impact damage. Almost 70,000 head impacts from the time of Pee Wee football through a pro career.
yeah,
70,000 impacts. And most of the concussions don't come from head to head, it comes from head to ground.
right.
And it's little things that you just realize it's like, God made us to be interesting people. I have a woodpecker that drives me crazy outside here. He loves this tree right here, and he's a great creature, and it's so loud. I have to shut things down. It's but what's interesting is a woodpecker, his tongue goes around his brain to protect the impact as he pecks, and when
That's
he
true.
stops pecking, the tongue goes. We don't have that. So what you're saying in hearing is we're not built with automatic hearing, you know, pieces.
Well, okay. So if you want to talk about how cool God is, they do. God invented a muscle, two muscles there that do exactly that. They tighten up stapedius and
Yes.
tensor tympani. The
Yes.
problem is it can't overwhelm what
Right.
man has deliberately overwhelmed it
That's
with.
a great point. That's
So
a
that
great
that
point.
so that's
Which
that's
means which means we still have to use our logic. God gave us intellect, he gave us logic, he gave us reason, and he gave us free will to, choose. And if you love loud music, there's a consequence. If
yeah,
you love a lot of salt, there's a consequence. If
yeah,
you love a lot of sugar, if you love a lot of anything, there's a consequence other than
yeah.
just
Yeah.
loving thy neighbor as thyself. Other than that, hey, there's some consequences.
And to talk about those consequences, like it's not dramatic, like, oh, I'm dying of cancer and I'm
Right.
having boils all over my body. The consequences of hearing loss is oftentimes, um, they talk about Alzheimer's,
Yes.
because if somebody says, what are you doing? I use it's windy out, and you're like, no, it's not Wednesday, it's Thursday. You sound like you have Alzheimer's. So you start to sound stupid, right? And the more
Yes.
stupid you sound, the more isolated you become because they're like, I talk to him, he doesn't make sense. I'm not going to talk to him.
Right.
And if you can't hear and you start saying stupid things, you kind of withdraw. So one of the problems with hearing loss like this is you withdraw and you withdraw and you withdraw. You kind of live a hermit's life, and it's not good. And the less contact you have, the less brain exercise you have, you do get into this dementia thing. So,
And that
uh,
crosses over into my world, which is the psychological human
sure,
behavior dynamic. So, it goes back and forth, which
yeah,
can be
right,
really
and it,
interesting.
right, and then on top of that, there's that hyperacusis, which is like the
Yes,
painful hearing, and then the tinnitus, which drives people insane and need people like you, because
right.
those people do shoot themselves.
I know,
Like
and I hear them on a regular basis, and
I've had two people that I've had to send in straitjackets to a psych ward because they had a gun and they had a method because of their tinnitus. Yeah. So
yeah, God bless you, Doc. We're going to wrap this one up again. So, influence today is where we are. Dr. John Lee, my guest today, SaveAmericasHearing.com being built right now. We just started this, so we're giving you like a sneak peek, like VIP kind of unveiling of what
Texas.
we're getting ready to do, all access to only a few. But if you want to know more about it, you can find me at terrylyles.com. Chet Tart is off today, and this is Influence Today. So thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, like and share it. There's probably someone in everyone's family or sphere of influence that has some hearing loss, hearing aid, hearing issue. So please like and share what you've heard today. Hopefully it wasn't too loud, and it could be good for you.
85.
85 or below.
There you go.
So thank you for listening in. This is Influence Today. I'm Dr. Terry Lyles. My guest today has been Dr. John Lee. Please like and share what you see and hear, and we'll talk to you next time.